So,
have to wait.
Nope, you're totally.
following the city commission meeting tonight, we're going to have an executive session pursuant to ORS 192.66028 to consult with counsel concerning legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. We do not anticipate needing to come back into regular session to make a decision. So I will call to order the Wednesday, February 5th, 2020 Oregon City Commission meeting to order. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Rachel Lau Smith. Here. Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Still present.
Mayor Dan Holliday.
Here. Please stand and join me in the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, under ceremonies, proclamations, and presentations, we have 20-058, Historic Review Board Member Oath of Office, and Commission President Lyle Smith is going to handle this swearing in. Mr. Blythe?
Go ahead and stick it right here. Just make sure you hold it up to your mouth.
All right, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Grant Blythe,
I, Grant Blythe,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
and affirm that I support the Constitution of the United States
and affirm that I support the Constitution of the United States
and laws of the state of Oregon,
and laws of the state of Oregon,
along with the Oregon City Municipal Charter and Code.
along with the Oregon City Municipal Charter and Code.
I will respect and support
I will respect and support
the Historic Review Board bylaws,
the Historic Review Board bylaws,
policies, operations, and decisions.
policies, operations, and decisions.
I recognize that a board member
I recognize that a board member
has no legal authority as an individual
has no legal authority as an individual,
and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote
and decisions can only be made by a majority vote
at a public Historic Review Board meeting.
at a public Historic Review Board meeting.
I will faithfully and honorably perform the duties of the office
I will faithfully and honorably perform the duties of the office
for which I am about to assume.
for which I am about to assume.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
This is signing your life away, you know that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So next I have commission appointments for 2020. Metro Policy Advisory Committee, MPAC, Commissioner Lyle Smith, and as an alternate, Commissioner Denise McGriff. South Fork Water Board, Mayor Dan Holliday, Commissioner Rocky Smith, and Commissioner Frank O'Donnell. Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, Mayor Dan Holliday, and Commissioner Lyle Smith, and the C4 Subcommittee, Commissioner Rachel Lau Smith. Downtown Oregon City Association Board, Commissioner Denise McGriff. Willamette Falls Heritage Area Coalition, Commissioner Denise McGriff, and an alternate to be determined. Willamette Falls Legacy Project Liaison, Mayor Dan Holliday and Commissioner Frank O'Donnell. Clackamas Heritage Partners, Commissioner Rocky Smith. Citizen Involvement Committee Commission Liaison, Commissioner Rachel Lau Smith. Brownfield Grant Committee, I'm going to hold this one in advance for right now. I'm not sure exactly when that's meeting and when it's going on, so we're going to figure that out first. Willamette Falls Lock State Commission, that's my appointment from Governor Brown. And the Beaver Creek Employment Area Blue Ribbon Committee is Commissioner O'Donnell. So those are commission appointments for 2020. And then last, we have the appointments of the CIC members. So for Berkeley Hills, we have primary of Janice Morris and alternate Carla Laws. For Kenema, primary is Dennis Anderson and alternate Linda Basinger. Caulfield Neighborhood Association, John Keys, and as an alternate, Kevin Schaffner. Gaffney Lane Neighborhood Association, primary Amy Wilhite, and there is no alternate as of now. The Hazel Grove Westling Farm Neighborhood Association is currently inactive. Hillendale Neighborhood Association, I have no appointments from that neighborhood association. McLaughlin Neighborhood Association is Denise Bailey as Beasley as the primary and Rita Mills as the alternate. Park Place Neighborhood Association primary is Steve Van Haverbeek and alternate is Bob LaSalle. The Rivercrest Neighborhood Association has not submitted any nominations as of this point. The South End Neighborhood Association is currently inactive. The Tower Vista Association has presented no members, neither has the Two Rivers Neighborhood Association. So with that, we are on to 20-054 Grid Resiliency Update presented by Portland General Electric and our own Mr. Underwood. Okay.
Our CEO, Maria.
Okay, thank you. So before we get started, I would like to mention that we're currently having a little issue with PGE getting the electrical projects moving forward on our police building. I would appreciate any effort you could make to make that happen faster.
We hear you.
Thank you.
And we'll follow up and make sure, and since I don't understand if we're behind or what's going on, I'll make sure and follow up afterwards.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that.
So first of all, thank you for
First
having
of all,
me.
you are.
I'm Maria Pope. I'm the president and CEO of Portland General Electric. With me here is Bill Messner, who is the director of our safety, resiliency, and security area. We also have Jill King, who's with us, and your very own Eric Underwood. So thank you for having us with us. With you tonight. We're going to talk about grid resiliency and disaster preparedness. I have just a couple of opening remarks that I'll just touch on. But first of all, I just want to emphasize how much we appreciate the relationship that we have with all of you. We take great pride in serving your 35,000 community members and your thriving, growing business community. We very much appreciate that safe, reliable, and affordable power is critical not only to the economy, but also to the safety of the cities that we serve. Many of our employees live and work here, and as you all may know, Oregon City is the home of really PGE and where we were founded over 130 years ago. We feel very close to this community. We operate the Sullivan Hydro Facility just across the river and actually have a number of operations under our federal license to operate that facility that touch both sides of the river. So thank you very much. We're also the #1 taxpayer in Clackamas County, and combined with franchise fees and privilege taxes contributed about $14 million annually to the respective budgets. We have shared common interests in creating a safe, reliable, and affordable system. We also recognize that your community members want green energy and to have a sustainable impact on the environment. We have 3 key priorities in this area. The first is decarbonize our own energy supply. Today, we're about 40% carbon-free, and in just a couple years, we will be 50% carbon-free. We're working closely with Transit Authority TriMet, also with Wilsonville, with City of Salem, yourselves on electrifying transportation. The transportation sector is the largest emitter of carbon in our economy. And then finally, to make sure that we're performing and that we're serving you and your community members with the service and products that you've come to expect and the reliability that we've done over the last 130 years. Renewable energy is more than just green power. It's really about a resilient grid, as we will continue to generate electricity centrally and transmit it into our urban centers. We will also be increasingly integrating customers' solar power, maybe their battery storage. We've integrated some resiliency centers to create hubs for protection during difficult periods, particularly earthquake or storms, essentially creating a virtual power plant within the distribution system. I'd now like to turn it over to Bill, who will talk about how we do that, and most importantly, how we're preparing and working with first responders and others to make sure that we're there for you and for your community members during times of crisis.
Thank you, Maria. It's an honor to be here tonight and present in front of you. As you know, as I know all of you are aware of the emerging threats that we face. Many are related to global warming and climate change. We've worked hard to invest millions of dollars in improving our system, managing vegetation, and testing our team's readiness to respond to storms common here in the Pacific Northwest. While each storm presents unique challenges, we're very proud about our response to storms. We do that pretty well. But as Maria said, the world's changing, and it's changing very quickly. Today, we are taking on new measures to prepare for extreme weather conditions caused by global warming. This is especially important when it comes to things like wildfires, which have devastated our neighbors to the south, California. We have stood up a task force to develop plans for preventing wildfires and making sure we can respond quickly when they do occur. We're working at the state, local, state, and federal levels to be able to respond to the threat of a Cascadia-level earthquake in our region. We are ramping up security so we can protect our systems not only against cyber but also physical attacks, and that includes terrorism as well. And finally, we are part of what we call a Western grid, which means we're part of a grid that contains 11 Western states and parts of Canada. And so when there are issues with that grid, we have to be able to respond as well to ensure that we have power for our customers.
You should know during the difficult time in California, we have sent our crews down there to help them as well.
And in addition to that, our preparedness for emergency basically concentrates on 4 primary areas. One is about emergency planning and exercises, including conducting exercises with the local and state and federal agencies. One of the most recent examples is we participated in GridX. It was a national exercise that basically encountered cyber as well as physical threats to our grid. And it was coordinated. And it was an excellent exercise because how connected we all are. In addition to that, we prepare our own staff on incident command structure. So that is basically the national language so we can interact with first responders, so we can communicate effectively when we have to respond in an emergency. We're also making our significant investments in hardening our systems, everything from making seismic upgrades at our plants to increasing our vegetation management efforts, adding alarms and monitors to our system where it can tell us before it fails that we know we may have an issue and we can respond ahead of time. We've invested millions of dollars in our system to improve reliability and resiliency. We are building redundant systems as well, so we can stand up our operations team in a new location if in a major event our noble operating facilities are not available. This is known really right now as the Integrated Operations Center, which is currently under construction. And lastly, recognizing that any kind of emergency, we may need help, we're strengthening our strategic partnerships, and that's why we're happy to be here tonight. Now, the next few slides are just kind of a more deep dive into the different areas. But as I talked about, we work year-round to prepare for such emergencies as storms. We have that robust tree trimming efforts that we do. We have increased that by 50% over last year. We've conducted year-round inspections of our facilities, and we have an ongoing focus on investing in, one example is tree wire, so our system can withstand trees that fall into our system. We share preparedness and safety messages with our customers and our employees. It's vitally important that our employees are prepared so they can come to work to serve you, our customers. We have to be here 100% of the time. and we do test our procedures annually. The image there to the right, this shows our 7-step process. We have a systematic approach to how we respond to power outages, and that just walks through those elements.
So as an example, we always restore power to hospitals, water treatment facilities, other critical infrastructure, before we will restore power to residential customers and things like that. So we have a very specific triage system that we work also knowing who might be a medical certification customer and others.
And as Maria mentioned earlier, we did respond to PG&E, and that's part of what we call mutual aid, and we have those in place as well. So if we need help, our mutual aid agreements will support our efforts to have recovery. This next slide is about wildfire prevention. So the good news for us, unlike California, much of our service area is located in the wet zone, which goes a long ways to preventing forest fires. But again, the weather is changing, so we are preparing ahead of time to do that. So just some of the highlights up there that I just want to point out would be that we have operational practices that we're putting in place now. So when it is wildfire season, we are allowing our system or preventing our system from responding and if there's an outage. So we actually will go out and physically check things ahead of time. We are preparing for responses. We are actually getting equipment to our crews so if there is a fire that they can, a small fire, if they can put it out, they do that. But primarily get out of the way. We're not forest fires. We want to get the experts in for that. But we do have tools in place that we can put out those small fires. And then we have communication and outreach. We are reaching out to all sorts of agencies to make sure we have great partnerships so we can respond accordingly and appropriately. Here on the cyber side of things, just one of the highlights I want to point out is that we have had an outside expert come in and test our systems, and for the last, in 2016 and just recently last year, and we're definitely on an approach to becoming best in class to protect our systems and our customers' vital information. In addition, we have expanded our cybersecurity team by 500% from 9 to 54 employees, and we are constantly on a campaign with our employees about phishing attacks. We are attacked every day at our company with phishing emails, and so we're a year-long campaign about making sure that they're our first line of defense. And then in addition here, we also have plans in place and how to behave or how to react to a cyber attack or a physical attack, and we test those plans as well. And this slide to me is probably the one that is the biggest threat to us in terms of damage. And that is that Cascadia level earthquake, a 700-mile long fault that is estimated to be about a 9.0 earthquake event. And one of the things I want to point out on this slide, the Oregon Resiliency Plan predicts that it will take 1 to 3 months to restore electricity and all the other vital resources to bring our community back up. So it's really important that we are prepared for it. And again, that's why we're starting these conversations, and we want to be here to get ahead of that. I did mention the Integrated Operations Center. That building is designed, and when it is built, to survive this earthquake. So we actually have a place so we can begin recovery, and it will house our critical grid operations as well as our Incident Command Center. And we have another backup facility to that called our Readiness Center, which will be a backup to our ROC. We definitely want to have its resiliency, and that's why we're doing this.
So is Avery one of those?
Avery is not. Avery is a distribution center. We have engineers there. The facility that Bill is talking about actually doesn't house any people on a regular basis. We do practice exercises, and it's actually just a stone's throw from here next to one of our substations.
I only ask because I built the fire alarm system for the Avery facility. So.
Oh, did you? Did you build it in the warehouse or did
No, in the office.
In the offices?
Yeah.
That's a lovely. It's a great office for our engineers and others.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So I wanted to end on this proportion here, but in this type of threat, I mean, we have strong interdependencies on critical infrastructure services and following an earthquake of this magnitude. So think of fuel, roads. We will definitely need partners in order for us to recover. And that is why, this ongoing collaborative partnerships are key. And so in closing, I just want to say that we have close working relationships with emergency operation peers in Oregon, and specifically in Oregon City and Clackamas County. Clackamas County, we have a good partnership with Nancy Bush. And then most recently, we did a test emergency exercise at our Faraday hydro plant not too far from here, in which Vance Walker participated, Public Works Assistant Director, as well as Patty Stewart of the Oregon City Police Department. We want to deepen our relationships and connections with Oregon City's emergency management, emergency responders, and public service teams. Eric Underwood, who is our local governmental affairs representative, and Jill King, who are both here tonight, are two members of the PG team who work with you to help identify ways we can become more together and more of a partnership. So thank you very much.
So I'm going to go first here because I have a couple of questions. So when you talk about facilities, out in the neighborhoods, I reported the telephone or the pole across the street from my house 4 years in a row. The top third is occupied by a family of squirrels, so it's pretty much hollow. And if it got, too much wind or whatever, that could come down. And I'm curious why, if it gets reported, it doesn't get fixed.
I can't answer why if it was reported it wasn't fixed. I'll look into it.
I'll send you the pole number.
That would be great. One of the things that we have done is we used to replace about 300 poles a year. Last year we replaced just under 2,000, and so we've dramatically taken up the number of poles that we need to replace. One of the things is we look at pole strength, and we measure and look at every pole in a 10-year cycle, but it sounds like what you're talking about has existed for a period of time. Most of the strength in a power pole is actually either below the ground or about the first 5 to 6 feet is where's the big strength area, depending on whether it's a fir pole or a cedar pole. And so that may be one of the reasons why they're prioritizing the poles that would have butt rot or other issues that on a higher level. So we have a very active pole replacement program.
Right.
Thank you.
The last question of mine is, there have been some recent reports in the media that as we move forward into the 2000s, or in the 2020s, that as we decommission both coal and natural gas facilities, that there is a definite danger of brownouts because obviously wind and solar do not work 24 hours a day. Is PGE considering using small-scale nuclear to help replace part of that, as it is a carbon-free source?
So, Mayor, let me address both your topics separately because I think they're very important. The first is with regards to resource adequacy. And the industry ourselves, we work collaboratively through a variety of entities, most notably the Northwest Power Pool. And we are concerned about the amount of what we call capacity that is there when the sun is not shining or the wind is not blowing. And that's very important. We do it through our hydro facilities on the Clackamas, and Pelton Round Butte and near Madras in the Bend area, as well as our contracts with the Mid-Columbia. We're extending those contracts and are looking to procure additional reliability. We are closing our Boardman coal plant at the end of the year, and we do have contracts to replace that capacity. I would say that as we look into the future, one of the things that's put additional pressure on the entire electric system in the Pacific Northwest is very large data centers and other high-tech companies that use a lot of power. And so as we go forward, we're going to need to look at how we balance these things. It will not only include solutions around generation, but transmission, as well as other solutions. It's one of the reasons that we're working on building out a more flexible grid. The second part of your question is with regards to small-scale nuclear. NuScale would be an example, or others. There is not an option right now in Oregon state law to have nuclear in the state of Oregon. We have worked collaboratively with NuScale, and their technology as well as permitting has really accelerated in just the last couple of years, and I think it's a very promising technology. Given the history that we have with nuclear in this state, we'll have to revisit it not only from a technical standpoint, but also from a legislative and legal standpoint.
So my last question is, why in your opinion, is hydropower not considered to be a renewable resource?
So when we began the discussion around renewable resources a number of years ago, there was a very strong desire to have renewable resources be new. And so if we counted the legacy hydro that we've enjoyed in the Pacific Northwest and in Oregon for years, then that defeated the purpose of adding new renewables onto the system. If we really step back and say, what was the underlying purpose of bringing renewable energy, with that time mostly wind power, today solar's more economic. It's really to reduce the carbon input. And what we like to talk about is carbon-free resources. So when I referred to our 40% today and 50% in just a couple of years, I very much was including our 25% hydro. It's a very important part of the power system in the Pacific Northwest and for our company. It's what keeps power prices affordable and our ability to integrate wind and solar into our system.
Any questions from the rest of the commission? No. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate the information.
Great. Mayor Halliday, thank you very much. Commissioners, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next up, we have citizen comments. Do we have any? I just remind folks that this is for items that are not currently on the agenda, and to watch the clock because I enforce the 3-minute limit. So with that, we have Mike McCauley and Armando Borbog. Borboa. Oh.
We're getting 2 separate 3-minute sessions, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. You are.
Good evening. My name is Mike McCauley. I am a member of the Trillium Park Estates Homeowners Association. We are located behind Willamette Falls Hospital, and we have some serious concerns about the landslide in our neighborhood that has not been addressed by the city. It has been over 3 years. That landslide happened February 16th of 2017, and absolutely nothing has been done except for signs put up on the road saying road closed. That's it. There has been no type of reinforcement of the drainage system, which is still continuing to erode the hillside away. I mean, not as much as even riprap or gravel has been put down there. We have a house in our neighborhood which has been condemned. It has been sitting there vacant for 3 years now. We have kids going into it, vagrants going around there, hanging out. We would like to know what is the intention of the city with this house, what's going to happen to it, because having a vacant house in your neighborhood affects your home values. You know, and then our big concern, which Armando is going to address, is part of the hospital construction and how this is going to affect this landslide area, because this construction area is directly behind the landslide. So you guys, we held a neighborhood meeting on July 11th, 2019. That was 2 years and 5 months after the landslide. And at that neighborhood meeting, they came up with 3 different solutions, but said they were still 2 years away before they could even be put in a budget, which is, you know, and that's ridiculous that it takes 5 years for anything to be addressed. So,
Mr. McCauley, they being who?
They actually, John Lewis was there. There, John Burrell, I believe was his name, who helped present it. And then there was actually a presentation company that we held a meeting here in these chambers. And so we just don't know where we stand. Right now, there's currently a home that is on the precipice of getting ready to start sliding down the hill too. So that homeowner is thoroughly concerned about their home and what's happening there, because nothing has been done to reinforce this whatsoever.
Commissioner Smith, you had a question?
A comment. I had a conversation at 4 o'clock with the city manager about this topic because we saw it on the news. I saw it on the news. And the city manager answered my questions about it. So I'm wondering if you would give a short answer.
I think we're gonna we'll let the public go, and then I'm gonna let Mr. Lewis go, and then if
Okay.
Tony has anything, we can follow up on that. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you.
So if we could both come up this time, Armando and Stefan Vraga.
Well, they're coming up. I want the commission to be aware that the city has received a type 2 application for the hospital project, and that is currently pending review by the city. So although I have no objection to hearing this testimony, and we will certainly can put it in the record for part of this type 2 proceeding, I'd urge the commission not to weigh in or evaluate this proposal because it may be before you in due time.
Okay, thank you. So name and city of residence for the record, please.
Armando Borboa, Oregon City, and in light with what Mrs. Richter said, and also yourself, Mayor, you, when the PG&E people were here, you said, I'm paraphrasing here, but you said if there's been a complaint made, why hasn't anything been done? I'm going to turn that back on you, sir. We've made complaints, and I'm specifically speaking about Davis Road on the north side of Providence Hospital. Okay. Now, when all of this new construction was done, there were community meetings being done, and we had a lot of concerns raised, and they were supposedly addressed. Hey, we're going to take care of it. We'll make sure that the traffic is not impeded. Now, I retired from the military after 27 years. I thought I'd be sitting at home growing hair, getting fat, and watching the grass grow. I'm growing hair, but that's about it. I'm now a full-time dad, and I'm up and down Davis Road 8 times. I have 2 boys, 2 different schools, 2 different schedules. I'm up and down Davis Road 8 times a day. Okay, and I see what's going on. Due to the limitations of my time, I'm not going to distribute all the pictures I've taken, but if you guys are interested, I have a picture right here of a commercial vehicle parked directly under the no parking sign for more than an hour. Okay, and I can bring you a whole host of photos of violations. Now, Davis Road, I'm sure the police chief knows about this, is a horrible intersection. There are accidents there once or twice a week. A UPS truck was recently T-boned there. Any vehicle going north on Division, if let's say it's a compact, cannot be seen because of all the trees and all the parking. Again, we brought up these concerns when the new construction was coming up, was supposedly addressed, and here we are with only one way in and out of that street. We're representing 66 families that live in that area, and we have exactly one way in or out. And if there are commercial trucks parked there, again, I have photos. If you're interested, we can talk about this later. But I have photos of commercial trucks parked next to the hospital and the homeowners parked on the opposite side. I drive a Toyota Tacoma or Tundra. I cannot get through without slowing down to 5 miles an hour just so that I don't clip off my windows. If an emergency were to happen, a fire truck could not get through. Okay, let me repeat myself. If there was an emergency, a fire truck could not get through to service the emergency without pushing these vehicles out of the way. And again, I've got pictures of commercial vehicles parked directly under the no parking and the loading and unloading sign. Now, bringing it back to the beginning, because I suspect I'm almost out of time. You said if a complaint's been made, why hasn't it been addressed? So I'm going to bring it back to that. We've made multiple complaints, and it's been referred to traffic control, and then a day later, the traffic control will show up, but that's a day later. It doesn't do anything right now when there's a problem. We've talked to Providence Hospital about this. We've talked to the city about this. Nothing's getting done. Now, as I said, I've retired out of the military after 27 years. I literally have nothing but time on my hands. And if need be, I will be here every week harassing you guys about this. I'm sure you know about this, and I'm sure you know about this as well. A stop sign was run over.
Sir, you're out of time. I hear your
and
concerns.
I will be here.
And I will.
And I will appreciate your addressing these issues.
Okay.
Thank you.
Stephen?
My name is Stephen Varga. I'm also involved with the same issues in the Trillium Park Homeowners Association and representing the homeowners that are there. I have been involved with the board off and on for the last 15 to 17 years, and we see the same issues coming up. We do have the Davis problem. We have the landslide. I believe it's probably the third landslide in that area. We have the hospital presenting a master plan, and then there's deviations from that. And I don't have the authority, neither one of us does, or the association, to follow up on these things, but there was improvements that were promised, as Armando mentioned, that were not on this last go-around on division, were not followed through. And those were requested, those were complained about, and here we are again. So what I ask of you, if you lived in our neighborhood, pretty sure you'd be in this seat doing the same. We're just looking to make sure that our neighborhood is livable. We don't have any concerns of a landslide. Next thing, there's trees involved that could take out houses that are not even involved in that landslide. And this is the body that we bring those concerns, and I would ask you to seriously take a look at these.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. LaSalle, is your comment on this subject? No. Okay, then Mr. Lewis, you want to address the concerns?
So real quickly, sorry. Thank you, Mayor. Real quickly, I just heard about this issue this afternoon in terms of the fact that we were going to have public comment on that. So my concern is really about the term absolutely nothing. The city has been in the mix of this landslide, like we are with all of our landslides. We understand the passion around landslides, especially when they affect housing. And this one had an impact on one specific housing. And there's another house on the other side of the canyon that was built much later, has a different foundation, but I understand there's some problems there too. Our work on this site has been involved in trying to study and evaluate that. We've hired one of our consulting engineers, RH2. They completed their report in May of 2019, and that report did suggest several solutions, some of which included removing a lot of the overburden that was originally built when the subdivision was built, and others involved a full-blown wall support structure. A full range of cost implications associated with all of those. Some left the road closed, some would allow for the road to be partially opened. And we're interested in seeing the city pursue the option that removes some of the material that would mitigate the slide activity that we're seeing in this area along Trillium Park Drive. But even that solution included about $1 million worth of improvements, street improvements, and there's also there's all the utilities, with the exception of sewer lines, have been abandoned in this roadway section. So the sewer line's still there. So we're monitoring that existing sewer line. We're also doing a lot of the all the field data collection on 4 inclinometers and piezometers that have been installed by the city since this slide happened. We're monitoring those quarterly. We've got a policy on how to do that. We're working with a geotech called GRI to kind of monitor the results there. The bottom line is the fix for this problem, as it pertains to the roadway and the right-of-way improvements, is significant. It's another one of these challenging slide areas. This area was developed in 1999. It's right on the edge of the Newell Creek Canyon. It's really this road, and there is no real roads between that and 213. So it's in that canyon area that you see as you're coming up 213, very steep, and it's the typical Newell Canyon kind of soil conditions. What we're going to be talking about later is on another topic. So similar scenario in that when this area was developed, it's not of our opinion that it was built to the standards that it would be built to today, which may or may not have allowed it at all. So we've got an active website. All the information that we have been collecting or producing is on that website and available. We did, Mr. McCauley accurately indicated that we notified the neighborhood. We've had a couple of neighborhood meetings here, but that one in 2019 was to go over the preliminary results of this engineering study. And our position with them is no different than it is today, in that we don't just have $1 million to spend on this project, and we also want to take the time to monitor this slide. It's a deep set slide, and so when we know that this slide gets active when we've got one of the wetter winters. So for instance, this winter, we're seeing very little to no movement in any of the inclinometers that we've been monitoring. But on a really, really wet winter, we're likely to see more movement there. So in order to fix the road, rather than try to fix it, patch it, we tried that for a couple of years in between previous landslide. We basically just barricaded the area off. We keep it, we monitor it. We monitor the utilities. We monitor any slide activity. We try to keep the road cracking in check with crack sealant. I haven't checked on it lately, but I'm hopeful the crew has. And we definitely see a need for a solution there, and a solution that still deals with, I guess the other thing that was brought up was this Davis issue. I'm not sure about the conditions of approval for the, I'm assuming we're talking about the development of the hospital, the last phase of the development of the hospital. So I don't know a condition there that maybe was or wasn't met. We'll look into that and provide this group more feedback on that, and you as well if you're interested in that. I don't know about the parking issue, but makes sense. We've got one road in and out. They're right about that. And that's true on really both sides of that slide area. So it is a concern. And when we do fix it, our proposal is to find a cost-effective fix that gives the traffic levels back there are relatively light. So the thought would be is a single lane reestablishment. There's good line of sight between one side of the slide and the other side of the slide, so that vehicles, you've seen it on some narrow bridges and kind of some of the rural sections of county roads where you wait for the oncoming traffic and you let them through. So that's the idea that we have in place, and that would include removal of all the material that's in the canyon now that's overburdened on that area, when replacement with some low unit weight material. That was kind of the solution that was recommended, just to again put the road grade back where it needs to be, but have that happen with a lighter unit weight material. So I get that we haven't constructed anything and it still looks very like a very temporary road closure, but we're monitoring it. And the thought be, as you folks know, we get lots of requests for projects, and in this case, some of the project funding that we don't have for this is transportation SDCs. It's not really a transportation SDC qualifying project. It's not really, with the exception of some of the, I would say that road envelope, there's some money for pavement maintenance, but the expensive part of this job is dealing with all that deep set soil and reestablishing that. Trying to figure out how to fund that is still a question that we need to bring to you and figure out. But we got a lot of project load and project liability on the books right now, so now's not really the time to allocate that, at least in my opinion.
So I guess my further follow-up question is, obviously our citizens feel like they haven't been communicated with on a regular basis. So when someone sends an email or makes a phone call, does some staff reach back out and explain what the situation is at the time?
Right. So I have had no contact on this topic from any of the folks that were at the neighborhood meeting. And at that neighborhood meeting, we talked a lot about the website and the fact that we were going to be creating a website. Now, have they called other areas? I don't know. We haven't had the time to go look to see who else they called. But I can definitely tell you, Mr. McCauley was at that meeting. Right. I don't recognize the other gentlemen, but maybe they were there. I think, Mr. McCauley, were you not the neighborhood, kind of the HOA? So, at that time, we provided contact information for myself or John Burrell, and we had the website up at the time, and we said that's where we'd be putting any new information. So the idea of having more neighborhood meetings, we could do that, but it often is frustrating when you don't have new information necessarily, other than the confirmation that, we've got monitoring data that's posted on the website. We could share that, but, again, it's on the website, it's available, and they can always call us direct. So I haven't received a call direct.
Okay. Questions?
Comment.
Sir, one at a time, okay? So Commissioner O'Donnell?
Just a quick comment. I mean, I understand the gentleman's frustration. We've had to report for 8 months, and apparently you're not aware of what we're doing. So there's two things communicated here. One was the slide conditions, and I'm not sure if the vacant house is related to that or not, but.
It is.
Okay, and I mean, some action needs to be taken, and our solution currently is monitoring. And these guys probably don't care about our budget. Their concern is their house and their living standards. But the second one is easier to solve. And I sat up here 15 years ago when I had a similar problem. And when an emergency vehicle can't get to me to save my life or someone else's life, that's a concern. And that can be an immediate action. That's not a long-term thing. I mean, clear that road, post it as necessary. I had to do it in front of my house when I got a 32-foot wide road and people were parking on both sides, and because of the curve, a fire engine couldn't get down there to save second-story people. So I would ask that we take immediate action on the parking solution, because that can be done. That's not a difficult thing to do.
Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, so I'm waiting to hear. I understand that you're monitoring, but I still haven't heard what the plan is. Right. If there's any plan, is it coming back to us with a budget request? Is it that, you're monitoring for 6 more months and then you're going to make a decision and you're then going to come to us with some request? Like, what are the next steps other than monitoring? Because I don't think monitoring is enough at this juncture.
Well, for me personally, not having completely thought through that, is that we are watching pretty closely some of the big capital projects that we have that are tapping our street fund. We're about to see bid results from the Wall Avenue project. We're in the midst of Myers Road. We've got South Second that's on the plate right now. We've got other project requests. This one's a high priority for us. The sewer fund has got money to do the sewer work, and thinking about land use associated with the hospital, we actually want to move that onto hospital property, so this is a good time for that. But it's really looking at budget.
Okay, but there's no interim solution. There's no interim short term. It must be closed at this point in time.
Right. I wouldn't feel comfortable putting cars on it in the condition it's in right now.
Okay. So Chief Ben, is there an intersection here with the police department regarding the vacant house or the challenge of the parking challenges? Yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't aware of any of this. The parking thing we can fix. We will go look at that. I just emailed myself to look into that. The challenge, I'm assuming, is going to be there's people who live there who are parking on the street.
That's not the problem.
Sir, I can't have you speak from the audience because the people on TV can't hear.
I understand.
So the answer is yes. We're going to look into that and see exactly. I haven't heard anything about the vacant house. We can take care of that stuff too. I have not known about it, but we'll be digging in to see what we can do to make a difference there.
So who owns the house?
It's
an insurance company, I assume?
No, at this point, it's still owned by the original owner. We do have an agreement a multi-agreement between our insurance, his insurance, him, and us. But there was some conditions that he needed to meet, and he has yet to meet those conditions.
You mean to
demo the house?
To demo the house? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, maybe we could.
So we could get a lot more aggressive there for sure.
Right.
Yeah, that's a code enforcement. I didn't know about it.
Any further questions?
Nope.
All right, we take your concern seriously, and we'll look into it and get back to you. Okay, Mr. LaSalle.
My name is Bob LaSalle. I live here in Oregon City, and my comments tonight are about the Community Development Department. Several years ago, I was at a volunteer appreciation event, and I happened to mention to Tony Conca, who was the Community Development Director at the time, that I really appreciated the contact that I had with the people in his department. And he looked at me with this incredulous look on his face. And he said, "Are you sure?" So you're talking about my department? And now it's under the control, I think she's in control, of Laura Turway. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Laura and her staff in that department. I haven't always agreed with them, their decisions and recommendations, but I do recognize they have a very hard job on their hands, and sometimes, all the time, they have to satisfy the city commission and the city manager and the developers and the citizens, all while adhering to the city codes and state statutes, little things here and there. And many times they're in kind of a catch-22, but I've seen them really go overboard to try to help people through some of the things that happen in the city in regards to community development. I've worked with Christina Robertson Gardner and, make sure I get this right, Diliana Vasileva. Close enough? Kelly Reed and Pete Walter many times, and they've all shown a really professional attitude and a huge help to me. So I'd like to just start the year by recognizing their efforts to make Oregon City a good place to live and thank them for their hard work. Personally, I think they need more administrative assistance. Thank you.
How much do you pay for that, Laura?
My life is better.
More than I did 5 years. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. With that, any other public comment? Last chance. Okay, we're gonna move on. Everybody okay with the agenda?
Yeah.
Say, okay, moving on. We're going to public hearings. This is a simple one. A requested continuance of AP 19-00001, appeal of planning files, blah, 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 blah. Holmes Lane, so this is a continuance, right? Do we need to do anything beyond just, do we need a motion?
I would so move.
To February 19th, 2020.
To February 19th, 2020. I would so move.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded, call roll.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Mayor Dan Holliday.
Aye. On to the big event of the night. PC 20-018, Forest Edge Apartment Stabilization at 14155 Beaver Creek Road, Geologic Hazard Review, Natural Resource Overlay District, and Site Plan and Design Review. Ms. Turley.
Thank you very much. The city received an application. I will read you. The city received an application for some work at the lower campus of Forest Edge Apartments. The work generally includes retaining an existing dewatering wells that were installed a couple years back, as well as installing a new stormwater system, a new emergency access interior roadway, as well as some mitigation plantings. The standards for which the City Commission reviews this application are identified in the staff report. And then also, I just wanted to identify that this application does not include reoccupancy of the dwellings. That occurs through the building official through a separate process, and obviously there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done if that happens. This is just for retaining the dewatering wells, improving the stormwater system, and then emergency access and those ancillary things as well. I did want to mention that we have a couple of information packets on your dais, which were submitted just now. So there's 2 items from the applicant, as well as a third memo from Mayor Neely as well. Assistant City Attorney Carrie Richter is going to do your legal disclosures, and then Christina Robertson Gardner will give you a brief highlight of the application before the applicant responds to any concerns you had last meeting.
I have one question first before we, who is Miller Nash representing?
The applicant.
Okay, thank you.
And could you answer a question? Where are we? Is the hearing still open or is it closed? Where are we on this?
The record is open.
The record is still open.
Yes. And my understanding is that the hearing was continued from the last meeting,
right,
and the
public
record is still open.
And so it's a public hearing.
What my understanding is, I'm going to read the 197763 disclosures in the event that there's someone present tonight who has not been at the previous hearings, and to make sure we capture any ex parte contacts or site visits since the last hearing. Then Ms. Robertson Gardner is going to give a brief summary, and then you're going to hear from the applicant and go from there.
Okay.
One more question. So can we, if I'm really interested in hearing what people have to say, if it's new information, if it's stuff they already repeated last time, then we've got that. We've got that in the record. We've got it in the notes and the minutes and everything else. So I'm just curious I'd like to ask Dan where we're going with that.
We're just going to go through the process like we always do. Obviously, I can't tell people not to repeat themselves, although I do attempt to at least modify that as much as I can. So, Ms. Richter, move on.
Sure. One public hearing on a land use application is scheduled for tonight. The City Commission's role is to conduct the public hearing and to make decisions about the matter before us. In making these decisions, Oregon City must apply the applicable codes and laws and cannot vary from or change those laws or codes. Members of the City Commission are to be unbiased. Before the start of the hearing, I will ask the commissioners whether they have any potential conflicts, such as family, financial, or business relationships with any of the applicants or with regard to the land in question. I will also ask whether any of the commissioners have discussed the application in question with any of the parties or have independent knowledge of the relevant facts, such as a visit to the site in question. This is just with regard to since we've had the last hearing, so in the last month. Any member of the audience may question any commissioner about their disclosures. A staff report has been prepared for this application, has been made available to the public 7 days before this hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to each to the proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure the commission will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown on the chart. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the city recorder before the hearing. Speakers will proceed in the order that your card is received. You should fill out your address on the card so the city will notify you of its final decision. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name and city of residence. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply, in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. Any person may submit written material while the public record is open. Any written materials received by city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to city staff while the record is open. If they are not given to staff, they will not be included in the record. If the city commission makes a decision to which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised on the record for the consideration of the city commission. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient detail and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond to the issue will not be deemed appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. So we're going to move forward, but before we do, I want to ask, does have an opportunity for any commissioner to identify any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statements to declare? Site visits need to be declared as well, please.
Well, I do. I have two disclosures. One is I had occasion to be approached by William Gifford during a social event. As a member of OCBA, he expressed his interest that he felt the site was of value to put back on the tax rolls and as a source of low-income housing. I will state openly that that's not news to me. I had already considered that in my own thoughts and about the thing, but I'll disclose that as a contact. Secondly, I did visit the site as of 4 p.m. today. I visited with the consent and cooperation of the owner, guided by his on-site maintenance fellow and the company of 2 city employees, and that was for my own. I wanted to not deal with this as an abstract concept. I had never been there. I walked the grounds.
Anybody else have anything to disclose?
No?
No.
Anybody in the audience wish to question Commissioner O'Donnell about his takeaways from a site visit or any other disclosures? Seeing none, we will move on with the staff report.
Thank you.
Robinson.
Mayor Holliday, City Commissioners, I have a very brief 5-slide presentation this evening to just orient you to your decision this evening. The proposal this evening is a site plan design review, geologic hazards, and natural resource overlay review for what has been installed, which is the dewatering wells, and what is being proposed, which is the underground stormwater detention system, its new location, the emergency access road connection or reconnection, the reconstructing existing utilities, repairing existing pavement, and the natural resource overlay district mitigation plantings. What this does not include, and what Mr. White has already said, is the authorization to reoccupy the lower campus. So 3 brief slides just to orientate. This is speaking about the lower campus of the Forge Ed's apartments. The emergency road reconnection is in at the lower right hand. The natural resource overlay mitigation is on the downslope area of the lower campus. And the new stormwater vault is mainly underneath the existing pavement, though some of it is on the far edges. And the new stormwater outfall is to the right of the vault. This shows the natural resource overlay district boundary and the natural resource mitigation planting area. So we heard you at the January 15th meeting that you had concerns and provided a staff report with 2 options. We have findings for denial, and what a denial means is removal of the existing dewatering wells and basically not approving and allowing the proposed actions of what I read before, which is stormwater improvements, the road, the utilities, and the natural resource mitigation. If the the dewatering wells are removed, we do have a type 1 process to make sure that whatever is removed in pervious area is replanted. And that would happen after that process. If this application is approved with conditions, which are also found in the revised staff report, the dewatering wells remain, and it is approval of the installation of the stormwater improvements, the emergency road reconnection, the reconstruction of existing utilities, repairing existing pavement, and the environmental mitigation. The staff report you have includes that analysis. Once again, both options for findings, depending on the deliberations of the City Commission. So this evening you have 3 options. One is to approve the application with conditions. The second is to deny, and the third is to continue the application to the February 19th meeting with any further direction, both to staff or the applicant. The applicant has submitted additional information in the record, and that was used along with staff in the revised staff report, and they are available this evening to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, then I'm going to open a public hearing. And does the applicant have a presentation?
Yes, we do have a presentation.
You have 15 minutes.
Jansen, I have the clicker for you.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor. Thank you for continuing this hearing so we could provide that additional information. We heard some of the concerns. First off, folks, let me introduce myself. Thank you very much. Jameson Luther from RJL Holdings. I'm one of the owners.
Kelly Hosseini with Miller Nash, attorney representing RJL Holdings.
Eric Staley, the engineering geologist from Geodesign.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so, oh great, we have that up. That's right here. Hold on one second, I'm seeing having good technical difficulties, as it were. Turn off Wi-Fi. So, we've heard some of your comments and concerns from the last meeting. And we wanted to speak a little bit more to provide additional information. Commissioner McGriff, this isn't, some of it is to reiterate some important points, but also provide additional information for you guys to consider. Another case in point is allowing, Commissioner O'Donnell requested a site visit, and we said, yes, that would be fine. And we, just to clarify, we were not present at that. So I wanted to start just by saying we have a very positive staff report. You saw that at the last meeting, and it has been revised. I just wanted to, that staff report is also, if you read those findings, I'll share some comments from that later. But they've done an excellent job, and I think you can see from the comments that were made earlier, you do have a great staff looking out for the city. Tonight, we've got the geotech to explain some additional information about our site, and also its ability to handle 100-year storm events, which was a question from Commissioner Lyle Smith. We also have our attorney, Kelly Hosseini, to talk a little bit about some legal points. But first, I wanted to just make a couple comments on the last meeting. I wanted to show you on this next slide a map of, it was out of order on here, but it's good on here. So this is a map, if you see on your screen, from the USGS of landslide activity in Oregon. You can see that landslide risks are common in Oregon, right? And new developments or repair of developments happens on roads, on new apartments, repairs of apartments, hillsides every year in Oregon on these properties, but it requires additional requirements. Things such as the municipal code of the geological hazard codes, right? We also have to introduce licensed geotechnical engineers to review these projects and repairs, as well as have third-party peer review of these our geotechs. Also, some of these sites require install of mitigation techniques like retaining walls and dewatering systems. One of the comments made earlier, you have an issue right now, and I think it's important to bring up that, you have a private owner in front of you right now that has the resources to repair this landslide, as we have done. And so that's an important thing to remember. Also, right next door to us, or I think you referenced a hospital that might be being proposed to be built, right? So it's common, right? You deal with properties in these landslide risk areas. Our neighbor, it's worth mentioning, Berry Hill, went through the exact same landslide event in December 2015, right? They went through this extra process of the geological hazards review. They met that code and were allowed by the city to repair their property and eventually reoccupy, albeit without coming up to the city commission, as this process has. So one also question that can come up, I think Commissioner O'Donnell, you had asked if this site would be built on today. Our civil engineer, PACE engineers, did do a preliminary review of the code, and with the additional code requirements of a geotechnical or geological hazard review, yes, it is possible to build on this site today. The problem with our site is that it actually wouldn't be dense enough. It wouldn't meet your minimum density, but I don't think that would be a problem in having lower density for that project, but that is a yes. So before I turn it over to Geodesign, I just wanted to show a couple projects that Geodesign has been involved with and show some of their expertise. So this is the OHSU Knight Cancer Research Building. They provided the geotechnical services for that and much of the South Waterfront development. This is an LAX midfield concourse down at that terminal, down my neck of the woods. and they also do mitigate landslides. And this is a landslide mitigation that they've done in Marion County. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric Staley from Geodesign to talk a little bit more about our site and the capacity of the system.
So in the interest of not repeating information, we're just going to talk about a couple of aspects of the landslide to help address some of the comments that have come up. This is a cross-section from our July 2018 report. I just wanted to highlight that the depth of failure is shown for the landslide, and it's based on the inclinometer measurements that we've made on the site. So those two black vertical lines are our inclinometers, and the slide plane hits right where we see the displacements in the data. It indicates that the slide plane is very flat underneath the lower campus, which is a little unusual for landslides, but in our case, it's important. So to the right, in your view, past GD11 is this.
Get a little closer to the microphone.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. All right, is this going to work?
Yeah, you're real audible now.
I'm real. Awesome. So, let's see, where was I? Well, we have the tapering lower slope is what I'll call it, to the right of GD11 where there's been some ground cracking and other things. And then to the left of GD10 is the remainder of the active slide and an ancient landslide remnant that's underneath the Berry Hill apartments. So that just gives you the underlying geometry of things. So the main slide forms a relatively rigid block in the midst of all this. And the main slide block that I'm talking about is between the cracks by GD10 and the other cracks shown in that little tapering lower slope. And it's failing along a fairly flat plane. And because it's a relatively rigid block on this plane, the buildings have withstood the landsliding over the years, and that's evident by the condition of the buildings at this point. When the slide was active, it moved relatively slowly, and that's really a consequence of the geometry of this slide. You have this large block on a flat plane, so it's not going to move rapidly like other slides do, right? This is supported by previous observations that, when the slide has been active, it's moved, typically in inches per year, so we're not moving feet. The slide is primarily driven by pore water pressure based on our analysis. So pore water pressure reduces the friction on the slide plane. It's the primary driver, and the dewatering system addresses that directly. It diminishes the water head, it cuts down on the pore water pressure and stabilizes it, so that if you reduce the groundwater, you reduce the pore water pressure. It's also important to point out, because of this geometry, that block stabilized helps to buttress the portion of the landslide that's underlying the Berry Hill apartments. And we also expect that over time, the lower slope to the right of GD11 will experience stabilization because it doesn't have the driving force of the main block behind it, and the water levels are being diminished. So we've seen this slide before from our last presentation. In summary, we've dropped the water level on average about 19 feet with the dewatering system compared to before the dewatering system. As we've collected water level data and rainfall data to assess the potential system, we've assessed whether it could handle large storms. Based on our analysis, the dewatering system could handle a 50 or 100-year design storm event. And the reason for that is twofold. On the one hand, we have 19 feet, effectively, of groundwater capacity in the subsurface before we'd risk a failure. So even though that storm might deliver a lot of water, there's a lot of room for it to take. But secondly, we are actively dewatering, pumping water out of the ground the entire time. So even though there might be a rapid increase after a storm event, we are immediately taking that water out. The natural system previously during the wet season was to have these lingering effects of storms add to one another. And so when a big storm came, there wasn't as much capacity. So those two together are important to understand.
And I just want to clarify, so they did some modeling on our system and it being able to handle a 100-year storm event. And so, Eric, do you think that most likely this system would have prevented that rain event that led to the December 2015 evacuation? Is that something we can say most likely?
Yes, and we did not experience a 50 or 100-year event during that series of storms in 2015. So our expectation is that the system would have been able to handle that storm.
Right.
We would have had the capacity in the subsurface.
Did you perchance review the 96 rainfall figures and see, and can you make a conclusion if that system could successfully handle that?
Right, so the 100-year storm was about a 5-inch rainstorm in 24 hours. We did not experience that in 96. The reason the 96 floods were so bad is because we had a lot of rain, so the ground was already pretty wet. We had low snow, which means there was a lot of accumulated snow on the hillsides. We then had a really deep freeze, so it preserved that snow, and then we had a Pineapple Express come through, and it melted the whole works and put it into the ground and especially into the waterways. So that was really a very rare convergence of a series of events.
Yeah, I tried to research it. I don't know what the rainfall was. I thought it might be 15 inches in a very limited number of days.
It might be on that month. I remember during the first 2 weeks, it was about 7 inches. So from the 1st to the 14th, I believe, of February.
But you're saying your system can handle that?
Yeah.
Can evacuate it?
Yeah, because we'd be constantly pumping as that occurs.
So with a maximum event that it might encounter as an engineer, what is your... when you design something, you design it to greater than the need will be by some factor. Usually in civil engineering, it's whatever, 125, 15. What is your factor, your safety factor in this system?
Well, so first off, the factor of safety in the slope stability analysis itself, we wanted to achieve a certain amount of dewatering in order to make this work.
And that 19-foot level represents that existing safety
we were
factor.
figuring about 15 to 20 feet. So yes, that worked. We've made the system such that if the need arose, we could add to it. So, at present, we have a 14-well system. If we needed to, we could add wells to the system to help accommodate. For example, if there were groundwater pressure coming off the hillside from Berry Hill, that'd be a place for us to potentially put additional wells.
Right, but that would occur after the event is being experienced. Have you given any consideration to adding X number of wells as a safety factor that might make this more attractive for approval?
Sure. We don't have a number of wells like that right now. What I would say is that the decision to make or to install more wells would be based on the monitoring data of water levels, not of necessarily inclinometer displacement, right? So we could check water levels first and say, no, we're not hitting our marks. Let's put in some more wells.
And I can tell you, as a commissioner, I'd be more comfortable if that system existed before the need for it arose. That if in fact,
understood,
10 wells works fine, 14 wells with 4 in reserve would give me a higher level of comfort. And I want to have an open discussion with you folks. I would also be more comfortable, and I've read extensively on this, if in fact we utilized the current devices establish a threshold of safety and an early warning system. And I've read how these things, unfortunately, these things usually impact those people in economic situations that are the weakest, And I want to be, as a citizen of this community, protective of those people. And I know all we're talking about is wells, but everybody knows that this is an if-then proposition. And I was there today, and I looked at it, and I looked at the upper campus from the lower, and some of those buildings are within 12 feet of the precipice, 12 feet. And yes, this block probably needs to be there to block that. And it needs to be there to block the other system, the other apartments above it.
Right.
So I'm trying to work with you and say, maybe if it's an if-then proposal for me, if you can give me a level of comfort.
Yeah, I think I can speak to that. We would be open to something, if the geotech recommended additional wells, it's something we would be open to.
Well, from an economic standpoint, if I looked at the number of apartments you have, it probably represents, my guess is a gross income of almost $750,000 a year. And my thought is, I believe the wells were stated at $10,000 a hole. That's that.
You got all these engineers on here that.
You can't pin down an engineer.
Soft costs, they're very, very, very real.
But I mean, if you look at, if you want to give this commission a level of comfort that we can say with the maximum degree of certainty we can occur, I've tried to review this, and I mean, I know it was possibly your harshest critic last time. But I mean, I'm trying to take everything into account, and I'm saying what would give me a potential level of comfort where I would feel that I'm not endangering the safety of my community. And that would be an overbuilt situation where I could engage additional wells should that rise and should that need arise, and an early warning system with an established threshold that said, hey, people, it's time to leave. And that may never be used.
Right.
But I would sure feel better if it was there.
Yeah, definitely.
And an audible system, not I report to you and you make calls. I mean, the siren goes off.
Right. Yeah.
You're repeating yourself now.
Not that I wasn't.
I understand. I understand the concerns.
Okay.
And it's valid. The system is modular. The alarm system is immediate. It is, if even one well has an issue, immediately multiple people are notified, including the city, as per our conditions, within 1 hour, our contractor and our geotech. So they're the most qualified people to respond to that. Also, as I said, we would be open to additional wells. One thing in your original geotech analysis and modeling, it was designed, with a 1.3 level of factor of safety in some initial modeling. So that is over, it's saying that they design over, and those were using conservative estimates. In terms of adding additional wells and a number, I mean, I don't know if I could come up with that right now, so, but we would be open to it.
Let's just finish your presentation.
Okay.
Thanks.
Then we'll turn it over to Kelly right now.
Okay, well, does it look like I have 2 minutes and 54 seconds? Maybe I can do it in that period of time.
Sorry, Kelly.
Oh, no problem. I just wanted to touch on the legal aspects of the denial finding, I'll call it. So staff has recommended approval of these applications based on staff's professional expertise, the expertise of the city's geotechnical engineer and the applicable criteria. With respect to 1744-060L, which requires the city to determine whether the proposed methods of rendering a known or potential hazard site safe for construction are feasible and adequate to prevent landslides or damage to property and safety, staff includes a lengthy set of findings. Staff's findings include the determination that the applicant has met all criteria, including providing thorough site information, complete protective measures, and solid conclusions concerning the likelihood of any negative effect on the site or the surrounding area. The findings identify groundwater as the source of the historic landslides in the area and acknowledge that the installation of a dewatering system reduces the possibility of a future landslide and protects surrounding property. The findings also acknowledge that the applicant has responded to all code as well as public concerns that have been raised. The findings also state that the applicant's dewatering system operations and maintenance plan requirements are above and beyond most geologic hazard sites within the city. The findings acknowledge that the nature of the historic landslide is slow-moving and is not anticipated to create catastrophic failure. And they state that the dewatering system and monitoring wells create a system that has a high probability of preventing any slides on the property. The approval finding concludes that based on all of this information, the applicant has met and exceeded the standards of city code as well as engineering design standards. The approval finding then demonstrates how the applicant has not only met the applicable criteria, but exceeded those criteria. Now, staff also includes in the revised staff report a denial finding for 1744-060L. The denial finding reaches denial by essentially requiring the applicant to guarantee or certify that the proposed dewatering system and monitoring wells will prevent any further earth movement. The denial findings interpret 1744-060L to require an applicant to demonstrate that the design will prevent landslides or damage. It also interprets that provision as requiring a high degree of certainty that no future landslides will occur and that the design of the development must ensure the prevention of landslides and damages. In other words, to meet this approval criterion, an applicant must be able to essentially guarantee or certify that there will be no future landslides. In my letter that I submitted tonight, I noted at least 4 problems with the denial findings. First, the interpretation is inconsistent with Chapter 1744's intent and purpose statements. If you read through the intent and purpose of Chapter 1744, it states that it's to reduce risk, prevent undue risk, and mitigate risk. It further states explicitly that in mitigating risk, the chapter is not intended to act as a guarantee that the hazard risk will be eliminated. But that's exactly how the denial finding interprets 1744-060L. That interpretation then is going to have a very difficult time surviving LUBA review. The second problem is that no licensed geotechnical engineer can provide the guarantee or certification that the denial finding would require. As explained in my letter and in Mr. Staley's submittal, such a guarantee or certification would violate the civil engineering ethical standards and the terms of any such engineer's professional liability insurance. Professional engineers are required to render their services with the ordinary degree of skill and care that would be used by other reasonably competent practitioners of the same discipline under similar circumstances. That's the standard. So the city cannot on one hand require a licensed engineer to design a project and then on the other hand interpret its code requirements for that project in such a way that a licensed engineer cannot legally comply with them.
Ma'am?
The third problem with the
Ma'am?
interpretation, yes.
Sorry, but I've given you a couple of extra minutes.
Yes.
We have this.
Am I beyond that already?
Yes.
Okay.
So the other 2 points that you're about to make are in your
Yes, they are.
letter, and I think everybody's had at least a chance to skim over that.
Which one was it? This one?
The big fat one. Yeah.
We have not.
Well, I will say there's only a few pages of letter. The rest of it is attachments.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll be back here at just before 10 till. I'll see what I can do.
And if we
Okay.
need to, we'll ask.
I'm going to call a meeting back to order. I am going
What
to
happened to the letter?
change the agenda a little bit. After this particular proceeding, we will skip the 2 second readings and go on to the Buena Vista House.
Well, we need to continue those.
We may need to. We'll see after we get through the Buena Vista House thing. So we've heard the applicant. I now will hear from, if we have any comments from Rec Neighborhood Association. None. We don't have any other government agencies.
Citizens.
So the rest is public comment, and for the spirit of time, given the late hour already, I'd like to limit folks to 2 minutes. So I apologize if you proceeded on the other event, but it's the way it's going to go tonight. So I'll start with Scott Stamen and Brian Lessler.
You want us both up there at the same
Please.
time? Hi, Scott. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Long time. Big fan. Scott Stamen, Wilsonville, Oregon. I am the owner of the Berry Hill Apartments up above this slide, and I think I'm probably the only guy to have built a wall to hold a slide in the city in a long time. So, and it's working wonderfully, by the way. So, just a couple quick comments from me. I think, I submitted a letter, but it's really a belt and suspenders thing for me. The whole idea of holding the hill up. I've got a wall that holds the hill up. It's 70 to 100 feet deep, pressing against the hillside, keeping it up, keeping my buildings up there. But then there's a bunch of dirt below me. And the longer that dirt stays there, I think the Geo guy had a little deal on the little deals. The longer that dirt stays there, the better it is for me. It's belt and suspenders. They'll be fine. So if there's a way to work somewhere to keep that there and not let it slide over time without any monitoring, without any wells, that would be very beneficial. Secondly, I don't know an engineer that doesn't over-engineer it. So I will tell you that every building owner that engages one always says, really? Does it have to be that deep or does it have to be that thick? So I think keep in mind that these guys don't risk their reputations, their licenses and that lightly. So if they're recommending something, they feel pretty strong about it. Then thirdly, so I can be quick, is what a great way to build bring affordable housing online, right? It'd be the cheapest way to get there. It's at a price point in the $1,000 to $1,100 range. That's the easiest, most highest demand. You need that here. Thirdly, what a way to bring the neighborhood back up, with empty places, and we get some vagrants here and there, we get some homeless here and there, we get some vandalism here or there. I mean, it's not huge, but it's there. So a way to bring activity around again would be pretty significant. So I would encourage you, for those reasons, to try to evaluate it in a very positive light.
I just have one quick question for you. Approximately how much do you spend on your retaining wall?
$1,200,000.
Thank you, sir.
210 feet long.
Mr. Lesser.
Yes, thank you. Brian Lessler. I live in Wilsonville also. We hadn't met before, so. I'm here to speak on behalf of this project, and reason being is I'm a general contractor, and we have, over the last 40 years or so, moved millions and millions of cubic yards of dirt in situations like this. So I look at this from a rather practical standpoint. I've looked at this site 4 times. I've had my utility contractor on site, and we've inspected the buildings thoroughly, unit by unit. The buildings are stable, and the event that occurred there was unique in anything I've ever seen in my career. Typically, you would see a lot of differential settlement. You would see damage to the buildings. It doesn't exist. So when he says that slope plane was relatively flat, it was. The whole thing moved in one plate almost.
So the work that they've done there, the dewatering wells, the monitoring wells are exactly what needs to be done. I've worked with Geodesign on many projects. They are the gold standard in geotechnical engineering. So you have the best scientific information that's available in this regard, in my mind. I would echo the fact that you're going to get some very good affordable housing out of this process. And by denying this and requiring the wells to be removed, I think you're assuring in the long run destability of that site and future problems. So I urge you to approve this.
Thanks, sir. Betty Schallberger and Andrew Williams.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I want to just make a couple brief points since I know.
Name and city for the record.
I'm Betty Schauberger. And I live at Forest Edge Apartments. I wanted to point out a couple small points along this. One is the need for the housing. There's not a day that you can be around Newell Canyon and not see the need for housing and all the homeless folks in and out of the canyon. And so the importance of this, I think, just can't be overlooked simply because we really do need that housing. The second one is that there's more than just one slide in Newell Canyon. You saw the slide earlier of the USGS of the landslides across Oregon, but there's also another mapping of the landslides in Newell Canyon by Scott Burns, who's a professor in geology. So there are other slides that either are stabilized or not. The most active one is on Thayer Road between Maple Lane and Ferguson Road, and that slide has taken out that road many times, but the road still gets fixed and it still stays open. So the argument against okaying another road that might or may not, and hopefully with all the technology going in to fix it, will not then interrupt that slide again, I think doesn't hold true for how things are across the city, and in particular for that one road that remains open with an active slide. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Andrew Williams, Forest Edge Apartments, Oregon City. Those guys said a lot of really good stuff. They know what they're doing. Sounds like they got it under control. So, I mean, for me, the most important thing would be the homeless people that are showing up in Oregon City. They're looking for a place to live, but there's no place to live because they're all full or they're vacant, like the house down the road or the house over there, and 42 apartments down below me. I've been working there for a couple of years, and I personally haven't seen any type of physical change on the structures themselves. I've been in every single apartment. There's no cracks. There's no, it doesn't look like they even moved. So, I mean, as far as the buildings being dangerous, I don't think that they are. As far as the ground being dangerous, I think that it is if the professionals don't come in and do what they're supposed to do. And they've got some pretty good credentials. So for me, I'm saying, hey, let's let them do their thing. And there's 42 families that are going to come off the street or, otherwise. But still, I mean, it comes back to there's 42 apartments that can be being lived in eventually. And so, I mean, to me, that's great.
Thanks, sir. So Mickey Moreland and Karen Nelson.
I'll go first. I'm Karen Nelson from Oregon City, Forest Edge Apartments. I've lived there for 12 years, and I've been a stay-at-home mother for 26 years, 4 sons, 2 still. Brought one here with me tonight. And I also want to, not super relevant, but I just want to say I got straight A's in physics and physical science in high school. Yay! So I understood every graph I saw, every map. I've looked at the maps myself actually over the years, and I understood everything that the representative here from Geodesign Inc. said, and if his company worked on OHSU and the waterfront of the east side of the Willamette River in downtown Portland, I'm going to be impressed with whatever he said, but I also understood what he said, and I agree with absolutely everything Kelly said about the actual assurance. And then, never mind. Just, I understood it. I totally back it up. I want to say that we've had several owners, a handful of owners that have come and gone, whether they made any money or not on the property. What you said is super important, and others have said about bringing more taxes, more affordable housing, but all of the lower loop apartments are going to be fully remodeled. I've seen some of the apartments that have been remodeled in the upper loop, not extensively, but when new neighbors moved in, we were friends, I was able to see inside and see the new appliances and nice carpeting, flooring, whatever. So I am excited personally for when the lower loop is able to open up. I want to move down there. It would be nice to get a new one. And I want to say about the new owner, this is the first owner we've had with the financial resources to do what needed to be done. So okaying just what is being asked now doesn't put anyone at risk yet, but getting that done. And then if, we wanted to ask for even more wells after that, right before moving tenants into those buildings. I think that might be a more appropriate request for that condition. And
Ma'am,
I'm excited. 2 minutes up?
you're out of time.
Good.
My name is Mickey Moreland. I lived at Forest Edge Apartments for 5 years. I lived down below. I was one of the evacuees. I moved on top, went on 3rd floor, and stayed there, and I'm still there, and I moved into a second apartment, one of the brand new ones, and they're very nice. They're going to make it lower, hopefully soon, because I wouldn't mind moving back down there again. New appliances, new flooring, everything was really nice. They did a good job remodeling these places, and they work hard, and I think it'll be well worth it.
And we got all new roofs.
Yes.
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Mayor Neely and Commissioner Mahoney.
What letter?
I've entered into the record in opposition to the project, but what I would like to do is if the project is in fact approved, I would like to recommend some conditions. The development site there is unique compared to other development sites, I believe. I believe that those apartments were built on what is called a sag. Certain slides occur that leave a shelf. A good example of that, if you want to see one, is if you go below the mausoleum in the cemetery, you'll see a sag there that is full of ponds that get waterlogged. So I want them to make that distinction made because the other developments aren't under those situations. I would hate to see additional water taken out of the groundwater from other sites. The groundwater provides a cool water that goes into Newell Creek. What I wanted to point out is that the waters in Abernathy Creek are warm. There's a lake off of Enrici Road created by an artificial dam, and that warms the water up to 10 degrees from the entry of the water into the lake and going us 10 degrees higher. Salmonids cannot take extended temperature times of more than 68 degrees or they'll die. So I'm concerned about the cool water going into the system during the summer. Two things I would like to see considered for conditions if you approve it. Ms. Turway mentioned a 5-year maintenance agreement. That should be a maintenance agreement for the life of the apartments, and it should be tied to the title of the apartments. If after that 5-year period, there's no maintenance agreement. I don't think the city should take it on because it's private property. And so you should have a life of the life of the apartments. The other thing I'd like to request is that, and I mentioned it at the last presentation, monthly, if not more regular, data summaries should be provided to and reviewed by the city in addition to the annual report. You don't want an annual report that tells you that you had problems in the last rainy season. You want to know when it happens. Those are the three things I want you to consider if you approve the project proposal.
Thanks, sir. Commissioner Mahoney?
Bob Mahoney, Oregon City. I guess I'm representing just one person, that's me, out of 35,000. But any time that you have to go to the extent that these people have gone to improve a piece of property, to assure and protect property, there's something wrong with this picture. What we're asking you to do, and what they're asking you to do and to consider, is to approve the buildings and the improvement of the property rather than consider public safety. And what we're talking about is human life here. Because if that did happen, if that thing went with people occupying those structures, I don't have to go any further than that. And that's really what we're considering. And I've looked at you people here as you're considering this, and there's a certain element of doubt in your face because of the risk. And that risk involves human life. And I'm asking you to consider that and not to approve this. My sympathies go with the homeless, but we're not putting them at risk just for the same, or for the reason of saying that we've accommodated homeless people and giving them a place to live. So please take that under consideration. That's what we're really, and also we don't have an emergency plan if that thing were to go. If it were to slide, where's our emergency plan to help those people out? It happened once. It can happen again. We don't know, and we don't know is the problem. If you're willing to roll the dice on that, well, I can't support that. So anyway, that's my thoughts. Thank you.
So just let me say this. We do have an emergency plan. It's fairly thick, 4 or 5 inches thick. It details all of the things that happened. In fact, we activated the Emergency Operations Center. We were there every day. Either me and Commissioner Smith or another commissioner were there doing the thing. So we do have our emergency operations plans in place.
But the one thing that didn't happen in that case, nobody lost their life. That thing goes and somebody loses their life and you're having fire and you're having access problems, you're going to put other people in jeopardy, the rescuers, things of that nature. So take that into consideration, please.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Gifford?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Commissioners. My name is William Gifford and I live in Oregon City. I'll be brief. I'll ask you to think of an acronym. EEL. I know Mayor Neely likes eels.
Lamprey.
Lamprey eels specifically. My acronym is just EEL. I've been told that some people might think that this is one of the most difficult decisions that the commission is going to have to make. And I sympathize with that, and I can understand that feeling. I would contend, however, that there's 2 ways of making decisions. One is with your gut, with your feelings, with your intuition, which is nice if you're buying a dress or a car or a piece of art. Those things are important. The other way of making a decision is based on more rational criteria. And the acronym of EEL I'm saying is, number 1 is engineering. The engineering has been done, it's been solid. The second E is economics. I think the case has been made that the advantage of having these housing units will benefit our community in many, many ways. And the L is law. The legalities of this are that if you are to deny this, you better have a pretty strong legal reason as to why this would not be, why this would be defensible. I think that you have an obligation to approve this application, and I certainly hope you get on with it.
Thanks, sir. So, anybody else? Okay, then we're gonna.
Rebuttal.
Yeah. No. Nice try, though. So the applicant can now have some time for rebuttal. So you got 5 minutes.
Great. Yeah, first, thank you for those comments. In support, does mean a lot to us, shows we're doing the right thing, which is nice to see. And also for the comments of concern, we can address some of those. One of the ones I wanted to talk about was, you talked about the more frequent reporting. We have that as a covenant. It is now quarterly reporting. And then also that reporting and also that maintenance is a recorded requirement of us and any owner. It just runs with the land. So that quarterly reporting and the the requirements in the operating and maintenance program are recorded in the land into perpetuity.
Yeah.
And then, Eric, did you have some? So you got some notes there.
I did have some notes, but I wanted to come back actually to Commissioner O'Donnell's question about engineering redundancy. We have our environmental engineer who helped with the dewatering system remind me that the pumps themselves are quite a bit overpowered compared to what we're using them at right now. They could each handle about 20 gallons per minute, and the total system is pulling 5 gallons per minute right now. So there is some capacity just in the wells themselves for an overbuilt condition. That said, regarding the sag that was being described, like I mentioned, it's a block. There's some ground cracks behind it, and this project would correct that so that the site adequately drains the way it's supposed to. So actually the sag would be repaired. Also, there was concern about warm water in the creek. The discharge from the dewatering system will be at about 52 to 55 degrees based on our temperature meters in the ground, because it's coming out at subsurface temperature. So we're actually going to help the creek maintain a cooler temperature.
I think that was it for rebuttals. One, you mentioned the ability to add. Oh, sorry.
You want to make sure we get there?
Yeah, the ability, the desire to add some additional factor of safety there, right? Use an engineering term. And, we are open to that. We've discussed it with Geotech as well. And we are on board to add an additional 4 wells to that 14 well system, which would be
it would be about a 25% increase of the well count that we feel is adequate at this time.
Where they would go is really under their review, but they said, yes, that will definitely help the system we have in place. Just to reiterate, is doing its job and was built with redundancy, overhead, headroom in mind, but it's not going to hurt, right? Adding some additional wells.
Well, you're looking at me, so I'll reply.
Oh, okay.
Comment this gentleman made, I understand that, but that's a function of horsepower, right? Gallons per minute, how much can you lift, how far? I'm talking about when a well comes offline, do I have a backup well that can do what I needed to do? And you just made that offer, so we're getting there. The second question is, if I were to consider this, and I'm not going to consider it tonight because we've chastised people for dumping this much paper on us at the beginning of a meeting without us digest. I just digested a 96-page report in detail. I need to digest this now, so I will move to move this forward, to set it over to a next date so I have a chance to read this. But would you consider some form of an early warning system, an audible, that if we got to a point, and I hope it'll never be used, that it would be sounded? Or how do you intend to notify those occupants if some danger begins to exist?
Sure. We do have the requirement to give an annual notice to the residents.
I know about the annual notice.
So in addition to that, we have a lift station up there for the sewage, pumping it uphill. It's got a little light on it. If something happens, the light goes off. We can have a light go off on that as well too, that, hey, there's an alert here. So someone can see this little buzzing thing, go talk to the office. Hey, your thing's buzzing down there, you know, and there's a number on there to call. They know what to do in case of this light going on. Talk to our, on-site staff. But let me also reiterate, it will have automatically already sent 3 notifications out at that point to Geodesign, our listed dewatering contractor, and myself, the owner. Right?
How about the occupants?
That would be the light I'm saying we could put on that alarm.
See, people don't see a light when they're asleep.
Right. May I also say that this is a 14-well system. If one of these wells goes down, there's still 13 all doing their job. And if even, it says in his report, if all of these wells were to go down at one point, it is not a catastrophic risk. These people will be alerted, we get out, we address it, and bring them back online. So I just want to clarify that this system, you think if one well goes down, holy crap, that's not the case. I'm sorry for getting a little casual, but...
And we're not making that statement.
Right.
The statement I am making is, in the end, there's 5 people sitting here who are going to make this decision.
Yeah.
And it's not a gut decision. I can tell you, gut doesn't stand up in any court of law.
Yes. We would be willing to, if an audible alarm is a condition, that would be fine. We could say there's an audible and a visual alarm.
I'm only one vote up here. We can discuss it. Again, we need to review this. And I think we can do it in a timely manner and get it done on the 19th.
So are you done with your rebuttal? You have anything else?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, thank you, sir. Then I'm going to close the public hearing, and I would take a motion to continue this.
Okay, before you
go ahead.
consider a motion, I'd like to let the commission know that we have an obligation to make a decision in this case by February 24th. So we need the record to be closed tonight so that we can come back on the 19th with a decision. So I need to hear from you whether or not you are closing the public record as part of this, or if you are leaving the public record open and continuing it. We are going to have a very difficult time meeting our statutory obligation to have a decision within the timeline required if you don't close the record tonight.
And what's the upshot of that if we were to not get it done?
The applicant can take us to circuit court in a proceeding called a mandamus, asking a judge to order us to approve the application without some good reason why. A reasoned explanation for why we didn't approve it in the timeline. And that court proceeding takes time, and the risk to the city of losing that court proceeding is that we have to pay the applicant's attorney's fees.
Ms. Hussain, can you come up for a second?
So that is not a place I would recommend the city go.
But if we made an agreement to extend that, we could do that. Would you guys be willing to give us an additional 30 days? We're trying to make a good faith effort to get to a situation that's good for everybody here.
Right, and that would be a question I would have to ask my client.
Sure.
I will say that we have already given an extension. We've been working on this for a long time. We worked with staff for about 1.5 years. And so we want to get to yes, but we want to get to yes. I mean, it can't take forever.
Right.
So, and I would tell you that, my folks got up here and with the concerns, okay, we can have an audible alarm, we can add 4 more wells. I keep hearing, I don't know. And so let's take 2 minutes. I'll talk to my client, but I guess 30 days is what you're asking for. Ms. Richter, do you know if the timeline works on?
Well,
When
we've got to hear, our next hearing would be on the 19th of February. And so if we just leave the whole shoot match open, come back on the 19th, we would have to go through all this again.
Right.
And then we close the public record and they make a decision and, you know, assuming that we've got coordination on conditions, which we were hoping we were there tonight.
Right.
It's clear we're not there. So, you know, we could be looking at then reconvening on March 4th for a decision. So yes, I would think that.
So let me talk to my client about getting us to March.
Let me just come right up here.
Oh, well, how about that?
Yeah, they got to talk to you.
Yeah.
We have made many concessions here. We have always taken the standpoint of let's work in a collaborative environment. Let's work with city staff, give them the time they need to do their due diligence. I just want to let you know, a year ago, we were with city staff and we planned, you know, type 2 process, this is where it's going to go. And they asked for an extension because it wanted to come up here. We granted that. Then we granted an additional extension on top of that. We need clarity, right? We are carrying this project. We are funding this continually. There is a financial piece to this, you know, that I have not tried to drive home to anyone here, right? So I would ask you, let's make the decision tonight. And if there are additional concerns that are here, let's talk about them now while we have a chance to respond and get this resolved. So are there any additional concerns that you have right now that could get this resolved tonight?
Well, we're about to find out. So if you guys take your sheets, I take that as a no, that you're interested in giving us another 30 days?
No. What's that?
Well,
let me consult with her for 2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the public hearing is closed at this point in time. We're going to have to deliberate a little bit, but
Well, I think that the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. The record is still open. You haven't closed the record.
Right.
I want to close the record too.
Do or don't?
I do.
I haven't had a chance to ask any of my questions tonight.
I haven't either. But
And how that's going to happen in 45 minutes or less, it's impossible.
What additional information do we hope to get?
Well, that's why I want to close the record.
Until the
'cause
applicant's in the room.
Yeah, let's wait, just wait a minute.
Okay.
I think that if your questions require additional evidence,
It will.
then we need to not close the record and you need to ask the questions.
well, while we're in this sort of holding mode, I will say that it is very clear that these folks are working as hard as they can to make this happen. And there are only 2 people up here who've actually built things, and that's me and Frank. And I am convinced that.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, that's not
Stop.
applicable.
Wait for the applicant.
Stop with what you're convinced of.
Okay.
Don't be that convinced. Hold that conviction.
Sometimes right,
Only an
sometimes
attorney can
wrong,
do
but
that.
Hang on.
Yes, we have given, we're willing to put these conditions in place for a decision tonight. We have done everything we can, above and beyond, exceeded, granted as much help as we could, and we've done everything, and we're willing to do more tonight by saying we will grant, agree to additional wells, 4 additional wells, the alarm system, on that as a condition, that's fine. But we would we would not grant the extension.
Okay, thanks, sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Can they stay there for questions? They're
Yeah,
gonna need to come back up.
yeah, you might as well just, I don't think we have any legal questions, but I think
Okay.
there's gonna be some
Oh,
other
no, I do,
technical
for
questions.
her.
Oh, then you might as well sit down, because apparently Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith does have a legal question.
I think it's quick. Back up.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Commissioner Lyle Smith.
Thank you. So to clarify very briefly.
Yes.
This document that you handed us tonight.
Yes.
I believe the contents is trying to address the denial language.
Right.
By itself. That's it, right?
That's all that's
That you do
doing.
not agree with the denial proposal recommendation that's in here,
Exactly.
correct?
That's all that's in there. There's nothing else. What was in the geo design memo is what Mr. Staley discussed when he was up here.
For the record, I don't
Yes.
agree with the denial language either.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure, since this came on our dais
Yes.
tonight, everybody
Yes.
knows that that's what she's talking about. She doesn't
Right.
agree with the denial language. I don't either.
Right.
Thank you for
And
clarifying.
I can apologize for that, but we didn't get, the language of the denial criterion until, a week before the hearing, and it takes us time to think about it and do what we needed to do, and that's why you didn't get it earlier. And I'm not faulting staff for that. I'm just saying that's how the timing worked out. But there's nothing in there that, I would say that, dear God, I need 2 more weeks to read it.
I have a couple other questions.
Questions?
Okay. So really quickly, so this is probably not for you, probably for the owners.
Okay. Shall I stay just in case, or?
That's up to you. The quarterly reporting to the city, is that on movement of the landslide, or is that on the wells, or both?
The quarterly reporting is on the system as a whole, alarms, maintenance, and then also on the wells themselves.
It's a data report, so it'll be all data we collect.
Is it just on the wells, though, or is it on any of the
It would be on the
piezometers or anything
piezometers,
that's-
inclinometers as well, too.
No, it wouldn't just be the dewatering wells. It would be all of our
Okay.
groundwater monitoring points. It'd be all of our inclinometer data.
So it would cover anything, any type of initial movement that you were starting to see? It would
Yes.
be an alert.
Because we want to know a lot sooner.
Quarterly is our.
You guys do.
Yeah.
Okay, and then to clarify, on the conditions, there's been some talk about the maintenance period and this 5 years, and I think there's some confusion there, so it would be good to have some clarity. It sounds like the maintenance of the system remains with the property, and the 5 years is just tied to the financial maintenance bond, is that correct? It is correct. Okay. So maintenance stays with the property, and then my last question is, do you have the owner for the property, do you have like an emergency response plan in place for this site?
For residents, yes, there is an emergency that the staff would follow, an emergency plan that they have. It's documented. It's on the.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Well, believe it or not, I have everything I need. I think we can do one of two things. We can come to an agreement, whether it be here on the 19th, and we can spend the money as you said you're willing to spend it, or we can spend it on legal fees and go to LUBA.
I'd like the first option. Definitely.
Pretty straightforward summary.
Commissioner Smith?
Well, shoot.
Sorry.
So there's 14 dewatering wells total, correct?
Correct.
They weren't all installed at the same time.
They were all installed at the same time.
And that was in what year?
That was in
early 2018.
Yeah.
Okay.
Installed and turned on March 2018.
Yeah, it was earlier. They were installed earlier.
What was the reasoning for where each well was placed?
Sure, I can speak to that.
In general.
In general, we're trying to get the maximum coverage of the site with the minimum amount of points. So we did a test well, we tested the aquifer, we figured out what its radius of effect was, and based on that radius, we placed all of the wells.
And the radius is 50 feet, 60 feet?
Might be a little more than that, but honestly, I don't have that number.
Okay, well, just based on the map, I mean, it could be 60 to 100 feet or so-ish.
Okay.
I mean, based on my guess, I don't know, but this questions go to the addition of other wells possibly. What I am seeing at the map, which is the map that I'm looking at right now, is figure 4 on page 11 of the staff report, which is clearly an old photograph, but all the dewatering wells are placed along the road. With the exception of the 2 that are within the buildings, or within the in-between buildings. So one of the topics that came up on the last meeting was the adding of the road, the additional connection of the loop, which, just based on this photograph, I'm guessing that new addition of road is at least 300, 400 feet to get around that last building. Which kind of then implies to me that if that road is extended, then that's where the wells go. Because that's where they're missing. And there was no answer to putting this road back in terms of how that affects the site. And since that's where there are no wells, that's still a massive concern to me. The staff report, because I was actually not sure of this at the last meeting, because I raised that road as an issue. In all of my lifetime, I don't remember there being a road there. And so it was implied in the staff report that there was a designed road there, it was built, and it was removed.
That's correct.
When was it removed?
It was removed after the sliding.
No, that road was not there.
No, it was. So I walked this site in 2006 when it first failed, and I walked that road. So I saw the ground cracks that formed in that asphalt.
The loop.
The loop,
The
absolutely.
continuing loop.
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Smith, I can attest to that as well. There used to be a looping water line and the roadway there. And then I want to say back 2006, I don't remember if they moved it in 2006 or shortly.
It might have been
thereafter.
2007 when they finally.
There was a loop road there.
No, okay, but the loop road wasn't there in the last slide event.
Oh, correct.
2015.
That's correct.
That's what I'm asking.
I'm sorry, no, that's correct.
So I know, so why was the road was removed because of slide activity?
From slide
Remove
damage.
the road.
That's correct. From slide damage. And if I wasn't on this project during this time, but I have heard that there was some removal of material in order to help stabilize the slide. There was an effort to remove some of the driving force from around the slide, and part of that, if I have heard, was that roadway.
So this is a big issue, because if we're relying on a decision tonight based on where those wells are, which I think you have shown a sufficient job of explaining, I have had no explanation of any wells in the area that we're building this new road, which you've alluded to was actually taken out by the slide. So we have no ability to know whether or not that road is any different putting that new section in than it was when it was there before, because we have no reference to that. And it's vague in the staff report. We don't have a date of when that road was removed. And clearly, that road wasn't just completely removed by the slide, because there'd still be pieces of it. Someone went in there and removed the road. And I want to know what date that was. And I want to know what the reason for removing that road was. And then I also want to know why the decision is so important that if that road was gone while people were still living in those apartments up until the most recent slide, why we need that road now. Because people were still occupying those buildings with that road not there. So was the road being placed back in that position a requirement of the fire department, a requirement of the city, or what?
Yeah, that's, I mean, I can speak to that a little bit, and I think it speaks to the the previous owner that you had at this site that allowed this site to get to the stage it was at, right? And it baffles me. This probably baffles you guys too. That road is there to serve a function, and that function is for turnaround, for fire emergency access. That's why it was there originally. That's why our proposal says, okay, we're gonna make sure that's back in there, so the fire department has a way for emergency access. We had originally proposed it as a gravel road, and that was geotech because less impervious surface, right? But the fire department says, you know what, we don't allow gravel roads, so we're gonna make it a paved road. You need to make a paved road. Okay, we'll do that. It's been accounted for in the civil engineering by Pace Engineering. That's all been accounted for. The impervious surfaces, the stormwater runoff.
So you do have surface water management there.
Yes, that definitely has surface water management at that road.
And the staff report highlights that as well.
You know, now in terms of placement of wells, I'm not a geotech, and the only geotech in this room right now is this guy and geodesign. So I can say, do you think 4 wells would be a good buffer and an additional headroom and provide additional factor of safety for the system? He said yes, so okay, let's agree to 4 wells, but I don't know where they're gonna go. He needs additional time, so let's have them review and where those go.
But these are they're just backup wells in case one fails. I mean,
they're backups on top of redundancy.
Right.
And headroom.
Okay.
Right, but my point is we're not dewatering the area where the road is.
But it's not
it
failing.
Is.
So the dewatering wells that we're using.
It's not failing today, but it did the last time we had a slide.
When there weren't dewatering wells.
I think the confusion is, do the watering wells need to be proximate to where the other slide was? And the answer is probably not. The watering wells need to evacuate the water from where it is.
From the source, yes, exactly. And and this array does that. What we're not seeing here is the topography, right?
Commissioner Smith, you have something else?
Yeah. And I appreciate the comments by the residents in the apartments, because I agree the current owner is doing far better of a job than in the past. We all know that. That's not a debate. I have a hard time with the comments about no cracks and the amount of movement, because I personally saw different when I was down there during the slide. So I have a hard time believing some of those comments about there were no cracks in the buildings and things like that. I was there. I saw it. So we need clarity too. You made the comment, we need clarity, and it's timing. We need time too. I don't feel confident yet with all the information. I think some of this gave me some answers that I really appreciate tonight, but I haven't read it all. And I'm not gonna make a decision on something that I haven't fully read. I do appreciate the comments in response to the staff report and the argument or the denial language. So I would like an answer from our point of view, staff point of view, of that denial language, and kind of answering the question that was asked about its inconsistency with the report.
Question for Ms. Richter.
The city commission is charged with interpreting the code, and that's the starting point. And what staff did was try to assist the commission in interpreting the code language differently. It is my belief that you never can tell at LUBA how things are going to go, but there is, the language of the term is will. That to me is pretty specific. And if there is reason to believe that the design will not prevent landslides or damage, then, there would be a basis for denial on that circumstance. So is there some interpretive flexibility in this code language? I think there is. The question about the evidence, I think, is a little more iffy, because there is, qualified, professional, licensed engineering evidence that suggests that the criteria have been satisfied.
On both sides. By the city and by the property.
So I think that gives me a little less comfort on that score. But I think that we've given the city enough, as much cover as I can muster.
Okay.
So, but you never, LUBA is also.
Just like a court, you never know.
You never do.
Do you have anything further, Commissioner Smith?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
May I comment on another consideration?
After you click your button, because I'm next in line.
Oh, you are? How did that happen?
So, as I was starting to say before, it is apparent to me that the owner and the engineering folks have done their job, and that the only two people up here who have built anything of any great import are Commissioner O'Donnell and myself, after almost 30 years in the construction industry. So every time we build a project, we have to depend on experts, on geotechs, on architects, on engineers, on landscape professionals. I mean, it just is across the board. And at some point, we have to say, okay, I'm looking at the 50,000 foot view. I don't have the luxury of getting down below ground level, because there's just too much information for me to process correctly. I have to look at the big picture. And to me, in the big picture, the applicant and staff have agreed that they've done everything that is humanly possible to try to stop this from happening again. Now, try to stop it from happening again. And, if we have an event like the Cascadia earthquake or something else, who knows what this place is going to look like.
Bigger issues.
Yeah. But more importantly, and this goes a little bit to Frank's, emergency notification system, just like floods here in Oregon City, these kind of landslide events don't happen overnight. They happen over a series of weeks, with regular rainfall over many, many days. If we're going to have a flood at the Clackamas and the Willamette River, we know at least 4 or 5 days beforehand, because we can see the water coming from Mount Hood and from down the valley and every other place. So I'm not terribly worried about, about having some kind of, mass emergency notification for the site itself. But I think the applicant has done everything humanly possible to mitigate this, and I don't see any reason why we should leave the record open or continue this again. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Well, I'm not even going to consider non-seismic or seismic events, because that's a whole other world. Okay, so let's forget that. But I'll say this again. The applicant has indicated his willingness to do everything that was asked of him. I mean, people live next to the Hanford Nuclear Reservation with the same type of warning systems, and again, not trying to deprive the attorney of income, but we can either do this and you agree to do the things that you stated you would do, or we can just call everything off and we can all go to LUBA and you can potentially win there and do none of those things, because you could possibly win. Say, I don't have to do any of those things now. So I would rather
get them done tonight.
Well, even
with the things, just to clarify with this, are we talking about the additional dewatering wells, the alarm system, and the visual and the audible alarm
Yes,
system?
that's what I'm talking about.
Then we're on the same page. I would like to get,
and
I'm
the
fine
only
getting that done.
The only thing that would keep me from doing it is because when people hand me masses of documents, and I just read the 96 pages that was done I read everything, and I just like to be comfortable with it. I appreciate the explanation, but we have literally chastised our own citizens for dropping documents like this on us on the night of the. And the mayor is first and foremost in that. But I just like the opportunity to review the documents. I think we can get it done on the 19th.
Well, I think the key is that it's really the first 5 pages of that are the meat of the argument in that document dump. But maybe Commissioner Lyle Smith.
Yeah, I realized I have one more quick question. For Ms. Richter, since we've added quarterly reporting to the city, I think I know the answer, but I just need to ask. Even though there's an indemnity that's going to be added, does that transfer any liability to the city? Because on the basis of the city being told of monitoring of any movement or anything?
No.
Doesn't change anything?
Doesn't
Okay.
change anything. I mean, just puts more eyes on reports.
I mean, all the good things, but I just want to make sure there aren't any
No,
other negatives.
So with that, we've talked about this for at least 4 or 5 hours. Is there a motion?
Well, we need to close the record.
Okay. So do I have to have a motion to close the record?
Well, I think you would ask your fellow commissioners, is there agreement to close the
You're
record?
okay with closing the record?
Yes. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Okay, record's closed.
Yep.
So now is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve PC 20-018 Forest Edge Apartment Stabilization at 14155 Beaver Creek Road with the additional conditions that we have discussed tonight.
Would you like
I
me
think
to
Ms.
say them?
Turway is going to mention what they are.
Condition of approval number 35, the applicant shall install 4 additional dewatering wells. Condition of approval number 36, the applicant shall install a visual and audible warning system in the event of a well failure for the benefit of the residences.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? Okay, so does somebody want to make a motion that we can pass?
I believe the motion is to continue it until the 19th, giving us time to review these last 2 documents.
Second.
But closing the record.
And closing the record.
Okay. Motion's been moved and seconded. Call roll.
Is there?
I gave you ample opportunity to talk. Call the roll, please.
About the motion.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Aye.
Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff,
No.
and Mayor Dan Holliday.
Aye.
I appreciate your consideration not being able for me to ask a question about the motion.
You had ample opportunity to ask questions.
No, this.
I'm done having this discussion.
And I'm done too.
Good. So moving on to.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, so just to recap, the record is closed. We have continued this till February 19th. 19th, we will deliberate and have a decision.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There you go.
I don't see how. I don't see how we can get any of the rest of this done tonight. I just don't see it.
I don't either.
10 minutes is not nearly enough time to have a discussion about the Buena Vista House. And on these other things, there's going to be some people that are going to argue about them. I would.
Consent? Can we get the
Also
consent
have
agenda?
executive session beyond that.
One second. So I would say let's move all 3 of these items to the next meeting. It's the 19th of February. Correct.
Oh, God.
And then I'll take a motion on the consent agenda.
I would like to make a comment, please, if I may.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I have spent a considerable amount of time working with staff on some additional language for the stormwater master plan. I made it very clear that I was going to be absent on the 19th, and I feel like I have invested a great deal of time on this, and I would like the opportunity to have my input on that. I will not be here on the 19th, and I would like consideration from my fellow commissioners to hold this over. I know John's not going to be happy, but I was ready to do it tonight.
Well, and sometimes you don't get what you want. Is there any serious issue about us moving it to the first meeting in March?
No.
Legally?
No.
Then we'll move those to the first meeting in March. We'll take the Buena Vista House on
the 19th.
On the 19th.
The only thing I would say about the Buena Vista House is that
That's coming up, the meetings.
The meeting where they're going to talk about it is the 27th. And so just recognizing that if you do want to comment, We'll have to work with somebody after the meeting to figure out what the comments say. And it won't, the final comments will not have an opportunity to come back to you.
Will I have an opportunity to submit comments on this? Obviously, as one of the authors of the document, I have very strong feelings about it. And again, I don't know if I'll be able to call in for that particular portion of the meeting.
Okay, well, we already moved it to the first meeting in March, so.
No, not the stormwater Buena Vista Clubhouse.
Oh.
It's the 27th of February is when it's going to be considered.
Well.
So do I have the opportunity to submit comments to staff and my fellow commissioners?
Sure. Commissioner Smith.
So we also have executive session, so if we're going beyond 10 o'clock, we have to decide pushing those off to another week as well.
Well, no, I was still figuring we're going to take the exec session.
If we go beyond 10 o'clock, we have to make a decision as a whole group, is that correct?
That says, it's stated as a regular, as a general meeting. It doesn't state it as a executive session, but that's up to the commission to decide.
Yeah, I think it is.
I don't have any problem with staying for the executive session.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda that's on tonight's agenda.
Second.
Move second for discussion. Call roll.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Rachel Lau Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff?
Aye.
Mayor Dan Holliday?
Aye. Mr. Mayor.
If I could please have a motion for the two stormwater items and continue those to a date certain for us, since it's part of a land use process. Thank you.
Second.
So we're going to continue the consideration of ordinance number 19-1014 and ordinance 19-1015 to the March 4th meeting.
Call roll.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Rachel Lau Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff?
Aye.
Mayor Dan Holliday?
Aye. Okay, so do you have an idea how much time we're going to need in exec session?
30 minutes.
So it's up to the commission. Are you willing to stay another 30 minutes and,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
I'll go last.
Commissioner Smith?
I'm okay with it.
Well,
I guess we have a majority.
there's three right there.
It needs to be unanimous.
Huh?
Doesn't need.
No, not anymore.
not anymore.
They changed it to be a majority, yeah. Sorry.
Okay, with that, if the city manager's report will have to wait till next month as well.
Can I just make one quick comment about the city manager's report?
Sure.
So this is just a quick update. We're going to bring back a more detailed update on where we're at with the Kenema right-of-way obstructions. We've been working on this. We've identified several obstructions within the right-of-way. We're ranking them, prioritizing them based on their impact. We just wanted to make the commission aware that we are preparing to send a letter to all the neighbors in Kenema, identifying that this is going to be on the work session in March for further discussion and to kind of inform them of the process. So we just want to make you aware.
Okay.
There's more detail in this, but just so you're aware, we're going to send that letter out so that they're aware of that meeting as well and the work that we're doing on this project.
Okay, with that, we will adjourn into exec session.